Greetings, everyone. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to Stoveside Chats. My name is Chad Blackwelder, Food Service Marketing Specialist for the North Carolina Department of Agriculture. Appreciate you guys joining us today and waving in. Thank you very much. We're going to be talking to Chef William Dissen today, who has 3 great restaurants. So there he is. And there's the Shivas Ranch. Thanks for joining us. Assimilate. Thanks for joining us. All right, let's bring in our guest. Hey, Chef.
Hey, how's it going today?
I'm doing good. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, excited to talk to you today.
Thank you. I appreciate you being here. All right, for everyone who's joining us, this is Chef William Dissen of, Asheville, Charlotte, and Asheboro. So, Chef, tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us about your background.
Sure. So I'm originally from West Virginia, born and raised in the capital in Charleston. Spent my formative years there. Went to school at WVU and majored in English and French, and left from there and traveled around and came back and did the culinary apprenticeship at the Greenbrier Resort before making my way south here to the Carolinas.
Very cool. So you have 3 restaurants. Again, like I said earlier, in 3 different cities. Tell us about those restaurants.
Sure. So I'm based out of Asheville, where we have the Marketplace restaurant. This year we're celebrating the 42nd anniversary of the business. It's my 12th year as a chef and owner. We also have Haymaker, where I'm at today, in Uptown Charlotte, and we just celebrated our 3rd anniversary. And then we have Billy D's Fried Chicken at the North Carolina Zoo in Asheboro that also just celebrated its 3rd anniversary.
Congratulations on all of that.
Thank you.
So now you're the first guest that I've had on that's done a TED Talks. So I'm expecting to be a lot smarter in 20 minutes.
Oh, I don't know about that. We'll try.
I understand. Okay, now obviously Billy D's Fried Chicken at the zoo is more casual and a great fried chicken sandwich. I've had it. Tell us the difference between what you're doing at the Marketplace and at Haymaker.
You know, actually, they're very similar. When we went to open Haymaker, the idea initially was to create a Marketplace Charlotte. And as we started to do it, we said, Charlotte has a lot of corporate chains. We don't want to be part of that. We want to be able to create our own identity. So Haymaker was born. And, the idea of Haymaker, has a lot of different meanings, right? A lot of people think of a knockout punch. I also think of Haymaker as a cocktail. But Haymaker is also a colloquial term for a farmer. So I thought, that the name really resonated with people. And so both are casual fine dining. We're open for dinner throughout the week, and we also do brunch on the weekends. And the menus are seasonal. We really focus on being hyper-local, sourcing from as many local farms as we can, and kind of the Appalachian know-how that I grew up around of preserving what's fresh when it's in season. So we do a lot of canning, pickling, fermenting, curing, drying, etc., so that when the vegetables and the fruits are at their peak ripeness, that we can then preserve that to use later in the year when the earth isn't as giving as it is in the summer.
Absolutely. Yeah, I remember growing up eating some fantastic vegetable soup in the middle of January.
Exactly. When you can in January pop open a little can of sunshine, as I like to say.
Absolutely. Now, you touched on something that was actually my next question. Now, you talked about your Appalachian heritage. Now, you're from West Virginia, and you have a place in Asheville. You talked a little bit about preserving some of those foodways, literally. What are some of the other things that you do that harken back to your experience growing up in that part of the country? And what do you want to communicate with people about the food from that region?
I think Southern food in particular is having its heyday right now. When people talk about American food, I think most of the country can relate to Southern food because it's it's kind of like Southern cooking. Appalachia, though, I feel like is the backbone of the South, and it has kind of its own unique identity with its food. And there's because it's been insulated by these mountains, there's a lot of recipes, and there's a lot of different heirloom and heritage ingredients that really have been kind of preserved throughout that region. And I feel like it really has helped create a unique foodway that I think really is untapped at this point.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that even people in the South have kind of kind of a one-dimensional idea about what Southern food is, and there's so many different regions that bring so much to the table. And I think that you're right about that part of the country. It's really new to a lot of people because it has been sort of tucked away for so long. And thank goodness for folks like you or her kind of helping to bring it out some.
Exactly. Well, will Appalachian Food be the it trend food? I don't know if it will ever make it that far. I'm certainly going to try to push it to do that. But I really love the ingredients that you can find throughout the region. I spent the last couple days up in the mountains outside of Asheville foraging for wild ramps. So I had my hands in the dirt, about 5,000 feet up, picking as many ramps as I could sustainably out of the ground, which is really fun.
That's really cool. Yeah, that's been all the buzz, as I'm sure you've seen on social media lately, as all the chefs asking, where are the ramps? But it sounds like you're going right to the source.
Yeah, no, I felt, today drove from Asheville down to Charlotte with 40 pounds of ramps in the back of my car. So we're loaded up and getting ready to process those for our menus here for the next few months ahead. Yeah,
you're lucky you didn't get hijacked by a group of chefs.
I know.
Now, you had 3 restaurants in 3 different towns. At one point in my career years ago, I had 2 restaurants right next door to each other, and it almost drove me nuts. How do you do it, man? How do you manage that? How do you balance all that?
Well, when owning a couple restaurants, right, when you walk in, it's Chef William, I need this, I need that, and there's so many things you have to do. The drive between the restaurants sometimes is annoying, but other days it's really great. I can take phone calls, I can have some serenity and peace of mind, but most days I can knock out a lot of work that I couldn't probably do if I was just sitting in the restaurant or working in the kitchen. I can have that quiet time and also time to think, which is great.
Yeah, absolutely. This is kind of a silly question, but so the fried chicken sandwiches are everywhere. Outside of Billy D's, what's your favorite fried chicken sandwich right now?
Oh, I don't know if you can trump that. Oh man, there's so many good ones. My buddy Elliot Moss at Buxton Hall in Asheville makes a really great fried chicken sandwich. Awesome. I think he said one of the first places he worked was at Chick-fil-A. So it's kind of his riff on a Chick-fil-A sandwich. So it was pretty solid.
Yeah, that is a chef's favorite for sure. That's just such a good sandwich, the Chick-fil-A. And yeah, Buxton Hall, those guys do a fantastic job. I want to talk a little bit about the work that you do outside of your restaurants concerning food policy. Can you talk about that a little bit, some of the groups that you work with and some of the stuff that you're advocating for?
For sure. I think something that's always been important to me is local food. Having that aspect of my life and being taught about farm-to-table food from my grandparents when I was growing up, I think resonated on me. And as I was graduating culinary school and starting to kind of create my own palate, I had a lot of chefs that were teaching me this, that if you want to be a great chef, you have to use the best ingredients. And I think for a lot of chefs at the time, it was foie gras and truffles and caviar. But for me, it was, the idea of fresh is best. I want to get food as direct from the source as I can. And when I was in culinary school, we took a wine class and they talked about when you're studying wine, when they're harvesting the grapes, you're taking a fancy thing called a mass spectrometer, which takes a sugar reading in the grape. And so the vintners will look for the Brix level through this, this piece of equipment. And the higher the sugar level, the better the wine, the better the alcohol, and the all around better the taste. And to me, that kind of translated into food, right? When you're the cliche idea of like, when do you want to eat a strawberry? When do you want to eat a tomato? Do you want to eat it in the middle of January? Or do you want to eat, the strawberry in the middle of May or tomato in the middle of July? I mean, that's almost a no-brainer. And so I thought, if I can create menus that really try to harness that freshness, it's going to make my job as a chef easier. I guess, come to find out the sourcing and all that and the planning is probably 10 times harder. But I think as the guest, when you sit down to eat, you have this explosive experience where, you eat a simple tomato salad or a tomato sandwich or something like that, and your head explodes off your shoulders because the tomatoes are extremely ripe. The acid is great. The fruitiness, everything, the color, everything is beautiful. And nature has done the work and the farmers have done the work for us.
Yeah, I think that's right. I don't know, it's kind of a double-edged sword like everything else, I guess, having such a globalized economy where you can get anything at any time. And I don't get that jacked up about a strawberry that's like ivory white inside that's coming from who knows where. Like I don't need a strawberry in January. You know,
Right.
I really don't. But
Well, what happened with me over the years, though, is as I was kind of researching food and trying to figure out, the ingredients at different phases of growth in a vegetable or a piece of fruit, and how I can manipulate it to make a menu item, I started thinking about the community and the people we support. I started thinking about, how the farmers were growing things, and not just in the stages of the vegetable or fruit's life, but also how they're treating the land. That translated into even the seafood we were sourcing. Questions of like, there was one, say probably 15 years ago, as an example, I was putting black grouper on my menu. And hypothetically, I would order 30 pounds of black grouper and you get one big fish. But as the years evolved, I'd place an order, and it was 2 fish, and then it was 3 fish, and it was 4 fish. And being an inquisitive chef, it was, well, what's happening to the fishery? Why can't I get that 130-pound fish anymore? And so I started doing research and got involved with the Monterey Bay Aquarium Seafood Watch program, which does a lot of work with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration on ocean sustainability, but also on sustainability of seafood species. Is it being overfished? Are there issues going on within the seafood habitat, such as like ocean acidification, or things that are affecting the livelihood of the species? And so, I think for me, I love food because there's so many attributes of it. There's, I can be an inquisitive person and always be learning. And that led me down the path of sustainability and advocacy, because I started learning about how things were being fished or harvested or grown. And there's a lot of people that aren't doing it the right way, and it's having a negative impact on the earth. And I'm not a Greenpeace hippie that get up on my stump and preach Greenpeace and environmentalism, but I look at it as a way that similar to what my grandparents did. If you didn't take care of the land you owned and the farm that you were growing your produce and your vegetables on that sustain your family, then you're not going to be able to feed them in years to come. So sustainability is imperative in order to sustain the land that we grow on. And that's just in the micro format. But when you look at it in a bigger perspective and a global perspective, there's a lot of big ticket issues that we need to fix. And really just my exploration and path into food has led me down the path of learning about how to take care of the world around us.
Yeah, it seems like it should be pretty simple to figure out. Now, you were part of the American Chef Corps. Tell us a little bit about that, what all that entailed, and how long that term lasted.
Well, I guess I was blowing hot air enough about sustainability and farm-to-table food that the U.S. State Department asked me to join on to their American Chef Corps. So they were a public-private partnership with the James Beard Foundation. There's about 70 chefs around the U.S. that they enlisted as culinary diplomats, and so will send us around the world to go to different countries and help promote U.S. food and culture, but also to talk about topics like sustainability and sourcing, maybe in nations that don't have quite a robust, farm-to-table movement.
Gotcha. Now, I want to cover a few things that you talked about in your TED Talk that I watched earlier, which was fantastic. That's on YouTube. You guys make sure you check it out. And also, really good interview with one of my heroes, Chef Rick Moonen. That was a great podcast you did with him on Forever Ocean. So you guys make sure you check that out as well. Talk a little bit about how the role of the chef is changing, and kind of, I guess, compared to what we've seen recently with the whole celebrity chef culture and how that kind of went awry and kind of got away from us, and how it seems like to me the chefs' voices are changing and wanting to promote more than just themselves now, and kind of their community and their partners that they form those relationships with. I want you to talk about that a little bit, Chef, and a little bit about how people can be better food citizens.
Sure. So, something with my Appalachian upbringing, there's kind of this idea of people live in Appalachian in the mountains because they can keep to themselves. And when you're on your land, there's this idea of like, stay off my land, this is my little piece of America. But there's also this huge spirit of community in that when you're in your town and in your community, or, at church or at the post office, you're around your people and you take time to appreciate them and get to know them. And to me, that's this idea of food, is that food is community. You know, we're all joined in one thing. We all have to eat. And I think, you know, if you spend time at the farmers markets and with the farmers and the people that frequent them, there's really just it's a beautiful community. And I feel like that's something that's been important to help promote too, and to be a culinary citizen through the way we source and through the way we treat our community.
Yeah. If you can expound on that a little bit as far as the importance of the chef and farmer relationship and how you kind of help promote some of those partners that you work with to help build those great menus that you have.
Yeah, so you know, in Asheville, you know, Western North Carolina, I'm on the board of directors for the Appalachian Sustainable Agriculture Project, which was really part of the reason I moved to Asheville. I was looking at different places to open a restaurant, and I actually went up to the Lake Eden Arts Festival to go see a show with some friends from South Carolina where I had been living. And I think we stopped somewhere to get beer, and there were this stack of local food guides. And I started reading through it, and I thought, well, this is everything I'm looking to do in my restaurant. And here's this guide that simplifies the whole thing. It's already created a relationship. I just have to call the phone number that's listed here. And so I started doing that, and I started frequently the tailgate markets and farmers markets once I got to Asheville, and started making those relationships. And really, it changed the way I cooked, you know, because I got to know the people who were growing my food, and they started educating me about the life cycle of their plants. You know, they'd say, oh, we have broccoli on our on our availability list, and I'd say, well, great, I'm going to write a menu. And then, you know, 2 months later, they say, well, we don't have broccoli anymore. And I'm thinking, well, what do I do? You know, and I had to really start shifting my mindset about how I create my menus, and then also understanding the different stages of it. You know, something like a squash blossom, you know, which is the flower coming off a squash plant that will inevitably turn into a full summer squash. But as a younger chef, I started learning, well, the squash blossoms are beautiful. I could stuff them with something and deep fry them and make a really unique item on my menu. But then I can also equally use a whole squash on the menu somewhere else. So the relationship afforded me the opportunity to have the conversation with the farmer, to educate myself, to learn more about the food that I was cooking and putting on the plate, and really helped, I think, for me to be able to create menus that were, you know, maybe a little bit ahead of my own time.
Yeah, I think it's super important. Like whenever you get together and start talking with a farmer, when a chef starts to have that conversation, a lot of cool things come out of that. I had a conversation with a farmer one time who was talking about, you know, all the chefs wanted his, I think it was microgreens or something like that, but some of the other stuff wasn't selling, and he kind of likened it to, you know, when you butcher a whole animal, you can't just sell the prime cuts. You gotta sell everything, and you got to get the chefs on board with doing that. And I never really thought about that before. I mean, obviously, you know, I use carrots, but was I looking out for local carrots like I should have been? You know, probably not. But after that, I was, because I'm like, yeah, he's right. He has more than just the microgreens. He's got all these other stuff that, you know, you have on your menu anyway. So it's I think when you start having those conversations, you realize, you know, what it takes to successfully farm, which is, you know, that's no small task, as you well know.
No, I mean, the restaurant industry is extraordinarily hard, but farming's even harder, and that's saying a lot.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I want to touch on COVID before we leave, and kind of tying into the conversation that we've been having about local. I know that it's been tough for everybody. I want you to talk a little bit about some of the things you guys had to go through, some of the changes you made, what's permanent, and, you know, that sort of thing. And then if you can finish up by talking a little bit, just explaining to people who might not understand how important it is for the local economies to make sure those local restaurants are intact, and what happens when those go away and there's just chains left.
For sure. Yeah, you know, the COVID's been really tough. You know, 2019, with my first restaurant in the Marketplace, we finally got to a place in business where it was like, wow, we're paying our debt off. You know, we're starting to actually turn the page and make some money as a business. And I think people come into restaurants and see them full on a Friday or Saturday, and they think, wow, this restaurant is crushing. These people are gazillionaires. Little do they know the trickle down and the profitability and how how the economics of a restaurant works. If you talk to an economist and they just shake their head about restaurateurs and how our industry works.
Yeah.
And so to get to that point was like, this like, hooray, I made it. And it was a real slap in the face when COVID hit, thinking, I'm going bankrupt. I'm going to lose everything. And loans I have, going to lose my house and my cars and what's going to happen to my family. But I think there was a point where, a lot of us were down the dumps, but, you kind of give yourself a swift kick in the rear and pull up your bootstraps. And I think restaurant people are some of the most resilient people on the planet. And said, okay, I've been in the weeds before. How can I get out of this again? And, started doing a lot of more advocacy work this time on the policy level, and got really joined in with Independent Restaurant Coalition and doing a lot of work advocating for policy for PPP loans. And, hopefully here soon, the Restaurant Relief Act will go through as grant funding for restaurants, which will be a huge help to kind of pull ourselves out of this. Hopefully the same trajectory as COVID is kind of on the way out. Hopefully we'll be on our way back up again, the restaurant industry.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I don't think a lot of people realize when, change do bring a certain amount to the local economy, but, chefs who have restaurants like yours and lots all the other talented chefs out there, man, you guys buy so much locally. Like, I don't think people really understand, like, it doesn't just affect the restaurant when it goes out of business and the employees, but there are so many other families and employees that, service those restaurants that gets affected as well. I don't think a lot of people really fully think that through, unfortunately.
When you eat at restaurants like ours, about 80 cents of every dollar is going back into local community, to the farms that we're sourcing from. And you got to think about those farms. They're sourcing from local feed stores, farm stores, tractor stores, repair stores. They're going to post offices. They're going to the doctor's office. They're creating commerce in their own communities. So there is this real trickle down effect of how your local sourcing and the dollars that you're spending in your community affect the community around you, make it a more vibrant place. If you look back, again, I geek out on the whole history of food and just learning about everything connected with food. But if you look back pre-industrialization, there were all these small cities, especially around through states like North Carolina, that were little vibrant towns, and they were all based around farming. And as things industrialized, those towns are tumbleweeds blowing through them now. And you can see that effect on how the farming community had on that region and on that community. And that's something that I really feel near and dear about. I'm sitting here staring at skyscrapers in the middle of uptown Charlotte as I talk to you, but all the small farms we source from and the foragers we buy from and the artisans we buy from, they live out in the outskirts of the region in their own little communities. And, I look at it that we're able to help them sustain their business and their families and help make their communities a strong place to live and thrive.
Well said. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Chef. We're out of time. I appreciate your time today. I know that you're super busy kind of getting things going again. And we're going to get you away from those skyscrapers pretty soon when we go down to Oriental.
Look forward to that.
For the Tidewater event, and we can geek out on food together. I'm looking forward to it, Chef. Thank you so much.
Sounds like a plan. Yeah, thank you. Nice talking with you.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
See ya.